24th meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is made up of 9 residents of the city of Troy who are nominated by the mayor and approved by a majority of city council for terms usually of a 3-year duration. This evening is a true study session. We have 2 study session items. We're going to talk about drive-thrus at the banks along the Big Beaver corridor, and we have 2 distinguished guests here this evening, Mark Mellon and Gunnar Lathan, and we're going to invite them in to talk about business development in the city of Troy as a lead-in to some goals and objectives we're going to talk about as a planning commission as we go forward. With that, would please call the roll.
Mr. Edmonds.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Crank.
Here.
Mr. Maxwell.
Here.
Mr. Sanzika. Mr. Shepke.
Here.
Mr. Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Stratt.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Here.
We have a quorum this evening. The second item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Approved by Mr. Schultz, second by Mr. Tagle. Vote on the motion, please.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Crank.
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell.
Yes.
Mr. Shepke.
Yes.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Stratt.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is approval of the minutes of the April 10th, 2012 regular meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Evans, second by Mr. Schultz. Any discussion on those minutes? All right, vote on the motion, please.
Mr. Crank.
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell.
Yes.
Mr. Shepke.
Yes.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Stratt.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next is item number 4, which is public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone present wishing to speak on any item that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to item 5, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals ZBA report. Mr. Stratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
There's one item that was on the agenda, which was a postponed item, and that was at the Vendors West Garden Center, which is on Coolidge, and they asked for a variance. Actually, the garden center was sold a couple years ago. It was actually abandoned, so to speak, and then these people have taken it over, and they asked for a variance to actually do some improvements on the site, which was granted after the second. There was quite a discussion on it, but it's all in the, actually it's in the floodplain area, or a lot of it's in the residential area, but it was in the floodplain area, so at any rate there wasn't much that could be done, and it was approved.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Is that up across from the nature center?
Yes?
Okay. The old Wilcox then?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Next is the Downtown Development Authority DDA report.
Mark, for old time's sake, do you want to do this one?
Well, there hasn't been a meeting for quite a while, but there will be a meeting on May 2nd. And the budget will be on that meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next is the Planning and Zoning report. I assume that's in Unit 7.
Yes, one of the planning commissioners brought up before the meeting, asked about the status of the Big Beaver Kilmer PUD on the north side of Big Beaver, just east of Livernois, and that is under construction, at least the retail portion on the front. It includes a Tim Hortons and about 20,000 square feet of retail. It is approved. It's basically it's retail on the front and residential behind it to the north. The residential, I believe, is 14 residential units. They're not getting any really a lot of they're not having a lot of luck moving forward with the residential portion. However, they are required by the PUD agreement to put the underground utilities in, as well as landscape the perimeter from the residential neighborhood to the north with fence wall and landscaping materials. So that's their solution for that. We are, and anecdotally, we're getting more people calling and coming to the counter and discussing residential applications, which I think is a great sign. Actually, the May 8th meeting, we've got a 10-unit site condominium proposed that's going to come before the Planning Commission. It's off of Crooks Road, just south of South Boulevard on the east side, Cedar Pines number 2. And again, we seem to have interest in residential moving forward. So I think that's a great sign that perhaps the economy is starting to turn a little bit.
You said there was 8 units?
I believe 10.
10 units.
Yeah.
That's Crooks and South Boulevard area?
Just south of that, about a half a mile on the east side.
Those were condos.
Yeah, see, it's Cedar Pines number 2, I believe is the name of that. Site condominiums, which is single-family
Right.
detached residential homes.
Is it connected to Cedar Pines?
Yes, shares detention with Cedar Pines. And there's a street that they front on, and I forget the name of the street, I apologize. But for anyone watching at home, the file's on, in the planning commission, if you want to, we can email it to you, or you can come in and look at the file.
Cedar Pines was the green residential development.
Yes, exactly. I believe,
Lake Pratt.
yeah.
How many units were approved in the PUD for the
The residential,
project?
14,
So there was only 14
There's
units
only
in there?
14.
Okay.
yes.
Okay, anything further? All right, we'll move on to item number 8, potential zoning ordinance text amendment, drive-throughs for financial institutions within the Big Beaver district. Brent, is that yours?
Yeah, I'll do this. As you're aware, we adopted the, I keep calling it our new zoning ordinance. It's just over a year old, barely a year old. Pardon me?
A lot newer than the old one.
Yes. Trying to get this up here. And as you're aware, there's a Big Beaver form-based district in the zoning ordinance. The Big Beaver district is essentially both sides of Big Beaver from essentially Coolidge to Rochester Road. It allows a wide range of uses. It encourages mixed-use development. It encourages infill. It's a very forward-thinking zoning ordinance classification or district. One thing when we created that district, we did not permit drive-throughs for any type of drive-through in the underlying Big Beaver district. The reason for that was really based on the Big Beaver corridor study, which called for making Big Beaver more of a people place, giving it more of a character, increasing the relationship between the building and the street, reducing the impact of the automobile. Although we're recognizing that Big Beaver plays an incredibly important function of getting traffic through Troy, we also wanted to make it more of a people place and really kind of reduce the role of the automobile. It doesn't. The Big Beaver corridor study in the master plan doesn't specifically say drive-throughs are prohibited, but that's kind of the approach we took when we put together the form-based district. As a result of that, we've got 8 banks, financial institutions, some are credit unions, that have drive-throughs that exist today within the Big Beaver zoning district. We've got some banks that have a presence on Big Beaver or have a presence in Troy that do not have a drive-through on Big Beaver. We've got at least 2 banks that would like a drive-through on Big Beaver. And as I indicated, we've got 8 drive-throughs today. So it seems to make sense from a competitive standpoint when we've got a number of again 8 banks on Big Beaver that have drive-throughs. We have got other ones who want to be able to compete, and they think it's important to have a presence there. So we thought this would be something to take to the Planning Commission, just kind of get your feedback on it. And we're only talking about financial institutions. There was a memo that was prepared that talks about the difference between drive-throughs for restaurants and drive-throughs for financial institutions. And I would argue that the secondary effects and the potential impact for financial institutions are significantly less than for restaurants. And the memo calls out a number of reasons, and I'll just briefly mention them. A drive-through for a restaurant can increase pedestrian, bicycle, and automobile points of contact. It can detract from streetscape character, which enhances pedestrian activity in retail, multifamily, and commercial areas. Drive-throughs for restaurants tend to be larger consumers of land. They take up more area. They require additional site area to accommodate the use. Restaurant drive-throughs support an automobile culture, discourage healthy, active transportation, and as I indicated, the secondary effects from noise, idling cars, voice amplification, lighting, hours of operation, et cetera, tend to be more impactful for drive-throughs for restaurants. So, with all that, we put together some aerials and some photos, and I want to just really quickly go through those, and then we'll get to some discussion. The first drive-through is located.
3001.
Pardon me?
South.
It's right here.
Right there.
It's right there. It's actually a credit union. This is the view looking from Coolidge, looking south.
That property has been reoccupied? It was a bank.
It is a credit union.
Used to be
It
PNC.
used to be PNC.
It's a credit union, Cornerstone. And just as they've got approval to reduce the number of stacking lanes here from 9 down to 4 and put this area back here back to landscaping. Kind of a neat project. Hasn't occurred yet, but they're talking about it. The next, this is not set very good. Next is Somerset. You see, this is actually, the drive-through portion is here on the south side of the building. You really can't see it from Big Beaver. Actually, it's for a bank with a drive-through, it's not bad, really. The presence tends to be more the building and the landscaping and not the drive-through. Alan, can you use the mouse and just kind of adjust? Just roll the ball on the mouse. There you go. Yep.
Is that your car?
Yes, it is. Needs a wash. This is looking at it from the east, and again that oops, that's the drive-through there, which again is shielded from Big Beaver. 2155. This is no PNC.
Chase. It says right on.
I'm sorry, Chase. You're right, Chase. I'm getting my order mixed up. Sorry. Good call, Tom. The building here, actually, not a bad relationship with Big Beaver. It's got some height. It does have some angled parking here. The drive-through is visible from Big Beaver. Actually, when you're stacking, you're actually pointing your headlights and pointing
Right
in
next
front
to Maggiano's, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
This is a view from the sidewalk of Big Beaver. Here's the drive-through area. Again, they've done a pretty nice job of landscaping, and there's some height there, so it's got a pretty good relationship. Here we've got two, double the bang for your buck here. We've got Huntington here, we've got PNC here. Alan, could you work your magic again? I'm sorry. Try to be more efficient and get away from the PowerPoint and use the PDF, and this is what happens. Huntington, this is actually on the south side of the building, not visible from Big Beaver. It's a fairly new building. And the PNC, the drive-through's at the side, on the east side. Again, this is an example of an infill development that we've had recently in front of the top of Troy building. Next one is the PNC. Thank you. Old habits. Genesis Credit Union. This is right here, and City Hall is right across the street here.
That's just an ATM.
But it is a drive-through.
Right, but it's just an ATM. I'm pretty sure.
Fairly well. I think it's more.
Because I use the ATM.
Again, this is Big Beaver right here, so it's highly visible from Big Beaver.
Been there for years, though.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them about the unique thing we found out about the tubes?
I'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Oh,
We'll get to
okay.
that when we talk about the design. Finally, there's two. This is PNC, and this is Charter One, and this is a photograph of Charter One. And for some reason, I took a picture of PNC, and my phone lost it. But it's. Anyways, so what we've got a bank who shall remain nameless, who is you can probably figure it out if you really put your mind to it, but it doesn't really matter. I asked them to give us a really kind of generic version of what they're proposing, and what they're proposing is a bank, the banking center building here, where you do your walk-in and the offices are, and with a clearly strong relationship with the sidewalk here with Big Beaver, and have the drive-through totally separate here, using tubes, either preferably underground, but there's some banks apparently in North America that have above-ground tubes. Mark raises a good point. We met with a bank that's headquartered in Troy, and they indicated that their belief is that there's problems with underground tubes because of the weather the change in temperature with moisture and whatnot. And he says he doesn't believe in going underground with tubes. But I talked to another bank. They have no problems with underground tubes. So depending who you talk to, but so what we're would like you to think about and to discuss this evening is the concept of modifying the standards for the Big Beaver Corridor study, allowing drive-throughs either by right or by special use. And I think rather than just, give a blank check for any type of design. I think it's important to have this type of relationship where you've got the bank that's, again, more of a human scale relationship to Big Beaver, walkable, high presence on Big Beaver, separating the drive-through element, kind of giving it more of a secondary role, giving the automobile more of a secondary role, but still allowing competitiveness between the different banks. So that's the presentation. I'd like to open it up and get your feedback.
Brett?
Yeah.
I like your idea and your thoughts on that. All the banks we've got so far, at least the drive-in portion is not fronting on Big Beaver. It's hidden or set back so that it's out of sight. It certainly doesn't draw the traffic that a restaurant or a food-consuming operation would have. And it's still not going to disturb the pedestrian orientation, because you're going to find that you're not going to have 40 people at noon hour trying to use a drive-in window, as you would at a McDonald's or something like that. And that would be consistent with pretty much all the banks we have so far already in the corridor. But I would suggest that if we think it's appropriate to change the zoning in there to allow a drive-in, that the specs, or I forget what your term is, your
Design standards?
design standards, thank you, would provide, it would always be recessed as much as possible, out of sight and non-intrusive. For instance, with the tubes, I can just envision the aerial tubes floating back and forth between the outbuilding and the main center. I would think that proper engineering, you could use your design specs to keep all that underground so it looks like an open space and still conduct their business.
Oh, go ahead, Mr.
You made a comment just a minute ago that you'd like to see drive-ins permitted either by right or special use. They must be permitted by special use right now because we have 8 of them.
No, they're actually not. They were at one point permitted by special use. They were all approved prior to the new ordinance. The new Big Beaver district prohibits drive-throughs of all kinds. So basically, those drive-throughs are legal non-conforming drive-throughs.
Okay.
I really think we should be considering it by special use so that we have control. And the reason why I say that is I think that we're going to be confronted with problem sites. They're not going to be open sites where we're going to have this kind of a thing. But I think the intent of what we want to accomplish is still very valid. And I still would want to maintain as much as possible the validity of the concept of the buildings being as close as possible to the property line, etc., and the walkability, etc., as demonstrated in the Big Beaver corridor study. But to me, we've got problem sites, and we're going to be confronted with existing banks or existing buildings that want to actually incorporate those.
Sure. Mr. Schultz?
Unless the planning director can give me an outstanding reason to permit them by right, I would agree with Mr. Stratt, simply because a site plan is going to have to come before the planning commission anyway, and special use shouldn't take any longer to approve than the site plan should. So it wouldn't hinder the development in any way, shape, or form. I also agree with Mr. Hudson. This layout would look atrocious with overhead tubes. It would look like a car wash with pipes outside. So, in this configuration, I'd have a real problem supporting overhead tubes, unless they could turn them into some kind of a piece of art.
Good luck with that. I agree. I think special use would be the way to go with it, and we keep the spirit of the design standards as much as possible. They're standards developed, good standards for a reason. I like to keep them. Do you have something to scream?
Yeah, I just want to add one little thought. Being here on just off of Big Beaver for 33 years, and I actually have banked at 5 of those 8 over the years, and all of them except 2 don't really have a special curb cut for the exit of those drive-through lanes. So as long as we have some kind of review for it to probably to put through those same kind of designed elements that the majority of them have, which is they go off to a side street or they go into another parking lot. The parking lot has a separate curb cut for that. As long as we can have some kind of control over where those vehicles exit onto Big Beaver, I think we should allow it under special use.
That's a great observation regarding the curb cuts. That's one thing that kind of jumped out at me when I was visiting them and taking the photographs, is when there's not a specific curb cut on Big Beaver, it potentially there's more design flexibility. Now, this is pre-Big Beaver corridor study and pre-new zoning ordinance, so there's still roads that go around the buildings. But one thing I like about this design is there's only one proposed curb cut here. You know, there's not two. You know, so that it's a lot better than, and it's narrow. It's not one of these expansive, you know, like the one, I don't want to be disparaging towards any, but one of them has got a wide driveway.
Yeah.
And you've got a number of lanes that are coming together. You know, it's
Yeah, that was the chase.
This is a lot more pedestrian, a lot better scale.
Yeah.
I agree with that. The curb cut, I think, is very important, and that made the difference with the banks that we've got there. And in my opinion, in looking at the banks, that there was not increased traffic flow because of the curb cuts.
That, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, just a quick comment, that might be a good standard, is that you don't have to have, you know, excess curb cuts onto the road right away.
Mr.
I agree with all the comments that have been made. I guess I'd ask a question to the commission. How far do you want to go with locating this, or identifying the acceptable locations? Because that's where the rubber's going to meet the road.
Locations you're talking about?
Of the drive-in. Yeah, I mean, just in the rear yard? What, in the side yard? I mean, where do we draw the line there? Because that's where it's going to, that's where the issue is going to come up.
Right.
Well, right now, the PNC Bank, which in one man's opinion is not an architectural gem, but, I mean, it has the drive-through on the east side, and I don't think it's objectionable. I doubt that very many people going 50 miles an hour across Big Beaver Road even see the drive-through on the side of that building. And that's if the traffic's heavy, they're going 50.
Sorry, Mr. Stewart.
Well, that's the one thing we're trying to do, is we're trying to discourage the 60-mile-an-hour drive-through. We're trying to make a walkability. We're trying to create that, so I have no objections to the actual openings. As far as, I do have an objection with seeing it. I don't think it's really an attractive site to see the actual drive-through. My firm, I've done at least over a dozen banks, and about 3 or 4 at least were underground, and we've had no problem whatsoever. So I see nothing on that, and the cameras are remote, so there's no reason why they can't be remote like this. And to be not seen is what my big concern would be, not to be able to see where that activity is going.
Interesting, the three of us are learning a little bit about drive-throughs here because we're dealing with some restaurants and as well as financial institutions. If you separate it like this, you give yourself more flexibility in terms of movement. If you attach it to the building, you can't attach it to to this side because the stacking is going to be on Big Beaver, which you can't do. You've either got to put it on this side or on this side. You're hamstrung. If it's in the rear yard, you can put it here. But now like Tom raised a great point. There's no perfect lot out there. They're all going to have some challenges. If you put it in the rear yard here, you're going to have to, stacking cars is now an issue because it's got to be on the driver's side door. So that you've got to have some flexibility. And the easiest way in this instance here is to separate it. The separating here for this lot makes the most sense.
Well, look at that piece of property. Under the old zoning ordinance, with the building set back X number of feet from the road, and, circulation around the building, there's no way they could have put a bank on a 110-foot piece of property.
Right.
It never would have happened. It would have sat there empty.
Right. That's a great point. Mr. Henson?
We've got 8 banks already in the district. I don't feel compelled because someone wants to put their bank in if it's a problem piece of property and turning ourselves inside out with our design standards and our thought behind the zone to accommodate them. If a property just doesn't work with our thoughts, shouldn't get permission to do it.
And that's exactly why I think it should be by special use.
Yep.
Right.
And just to add to your list, there are actually 9 drive-throughs, but one of them is inactive right now because the drive-through at the Huntington, the original Huntington building was never taken out when the new drive-through was put in. That drive-through is still there, it's just not used. So there, you have 9. One piece of property has 2 of them.
Mr. Edmonds?
Just one other thing, I know the Big Beaver corridor study and everything really strongly recommended feeder routes on the side, I guess they're feeder lanes. Is this going to make any effect or have any impact on that type of a design? Because the whole idea was to slow down the traffic on Big Beaver too, and then have single lane traffic going through and being able to, park near sidewalk. But
This would be consistent with that effort.
Okay.
I mean, it would still be able to, you'd still be able to accommodate. That's a long ways away. I mean, it is a goal eventually, but that's years and years away.
Was that in the right-of-way? Did you have to
Yeah.
buy more right-of-way, did
It
they?
was in the right of way.
It was?
Yes. There's 204 feet.
Pretty restricted.
Except for in front of the Kresge Foundation. That would have taken the historic building.
Was there anything further on this item?
What we'd like to do is come back with a first cut at some standards.
Sure, sounds great. Okay. That's wonderful.
That's not the mark.
Well, we'll move on to the next item, planning economic development. Now, give you a little background on this particular item. Last December, I think it was, Mr. Hudson talked about potential goals for the Planning Commission. And I thought that the business development in our town certainly needs the attention from everyone that can get involved in it. Now, I wanted to see if there was some things that we could do in our role as a Planning Commission to help in the process. There's lots of, the process of economic development covers all kinds of areas. And these gentlemen this evening are going to tell us some things about what they do and their role, and that's going to help us determine in some respects what our role is. Can we do some things that would be helpful to them possibly and to the city? But the main thing is that we need to do everything we can to bring more business into the city of Troy. What's happened in the last decade is that we had at one time was a 50-50 split tax revenue between commercial and residential, and that has slipped much more in favor of the residential side in the last decade. If we're going to continue to thrive in the way that we have in the past, we have to bring more business in and reduce the tax burden on the residential taxpayer. And so it behooves all of us to get involved, I think, in this process. Now, what can we do? Well, the Planning Commission certainly is an incubator of ideas. I want to hear from the gentleman this evening, and then after this particular meeting, I'd like to have a brainstorming session. We just put all kinds of ideas on the table. And what can we do as a Planning Commission to help facilitate this goal? So, do you have any further to add to that this time, Brent?
No, that's an outstanding introduction, and the three of us will be speaking, and Mark will be talking about the development approval process in general. Glenn will link that with economic development and kind of the new direction that we're taking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to talk about some of the efforts the Planning Commission's made and some of the strides we've made creating an environment that's an environment for investment in the city of Troy.
That's great. Well, take it away.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, well, first of all, Brent asked me to talk about the development approval process, which we had a study done in 2008 by Zucker Systems. But I want to say that in creating this environment for investment, the Planning Commission actually has a critical role. And there's a couple things that you have been involved with, which Brent is going to talk a little bit more about, but I have to mention because I was involved with him. I think it was critical when I came in working here as planning director that we amend or totally update the master plan and then the zoning ordinance. I thought that those were just critical tools, and it was just good professional planning to do that with the Planning Commission. But, and I'll let Brent really talk more about that, but what we're trying to do is basically try to maintain a great community to live and work in, protect the neighborhoods, but at the same time, get out of the way and let development occur. And you're part of that. So what happened in, and everyone probably remembers Brian Murphy when he worked here, who we had gotten some feedback that it was hard to get development approval, it was hard to get building permits, it was hard to get engineering permits in the city of Troy. And anecdotally, we know, sometimes we had problems, but we didn't think we were that bad. But it had gotten to the point where we had to prove that we were pretty darn good. But on the other hand, what was happening is that we were starting to understand more modern management techniques where you can't just rest on your laurels, you have to have a culture of continuous improvements, good to great. And so what we did is I asked Brian to take care of preparing the specifications for the development approval study. And what we did is we set up specs to have a firm look at all the way from economic development to the final C of O. And some of you may remember Mr. Zucker and his staff talked to you in that process. And so we hired them, and the objectives of the study was to evaluate the development approval and permit process from A to Z. And one thing that Zucker Systems found is that we pride ourselves being a premier city in the state of Michigan wishes to remain in that category. And then Zucker Systems came in and they had a methodology. They interviewed staff, the policymakers, which you are part of that, and those of you were interviewed, customers, and there was considerable input from the customers, and their consulting experience. And then they have observations where they review records and do interviews, and they had extensive interviews with staff and even developers and builders. And then they do an operational analysis, and then they provide recommendations and an action plan. The specific activities that they were involved with, there was 3 focus groups of 20 people, and I was, put that together, and there were groups of builders, engineers, and architects, where they actually sat down and talked with them. They didn't even allow us in the room. We mailed a survey to 957 applicants, and that's engineering, planning and zoning, and building. They interviewed mayor and 6 council members. They met with 38 managers and staff and had questionnaires. And one thing I'll note in this process is that they had confidential meetings with staff. And they also, when they met with groups of staff, they didn't allow management to be there. But above and beyond that, they had a confidential portal on their website so that staff could actually have their honest opinions and put them forward. And they observed planning commission meetings. Now, I have to tell a story. This just popped in my head. And it's something we corrected because the whole point of this, it was actually tough. It was like bearing our bureaucratic soul. Because here I was like, it was a pain in the neck because I had to set up all these interviews. And it was just to find problems that we don't do good. I mean, their intent was to make us improve, but Mr. Zucker also told me he gets people fired sometimes because they find so many things wrong. But they held a meeting in which they had building inspectors in. And I found about this later. Mr. Zucker said, does anyone have anything to say? Problems, doing your job. A building inspector raises her hand. Yes, well, what's wrong? He goes, well, we don't have computers. He goes, this is 2007 going into 2008. What do you mean you don't have computers? Well, 3 inspectors share 1 computer, and I have to go home at night and do searches on specifications at home. I can't do it at work. So within an hour and a half, Mr. Zucker was already using that against us. He goes, and that's an example. It was interesting because the technology was not being utilized by staff or being offered, and the person was going home at night and doing research to be able to do his job. They observed the DDA authority meeting. They identified areas of strengths that we were operating pretty darn well. Their customers were pretty well satisfied, which was surprising. You know, the staff scored us pretty high. Sometimes they run into staffs which don't do that. So what happened is they provided 102 recommendations, and they prioritized. But this has been quite a while. It's been almost 4 years since the recommendations came in. We've already implemented them. We have staff members who pin these on the wall in their office and check them off as we do it. Safe Built does that also. You right now are one of the things. This e-agenda was one of the recommendations. So there were 3 priority areas which they identified which we could attack. First was technology. Timelines is the second thing, which was interesting is because Mr. Zucker, who is a planner by training, but developed a consulting practice which really only deals with development approval, building departments, planning departments, engineering, and how to improve them. He's developed standards, and the only person that's done it for timelines on review for site plans, for zonings, and in building departments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then an area with budget and fees. Another interesting thing which Mr. Zucker has documented by all of his clients is that they've identified that developers don't mind paying for fees for good service. They don't mind paying higher fees if it means that they can get fast, fair, and predictable approvals. Technology. They had their findings. We basically had a pretty good infrastructure. For development approval and permit process, we lag behind. That's actually the planning department. And the reason why that is we have a program for engineering, assessing data, and building department data, building permits. And it's a program that's all integrated, geo-synced through addresses and property ID numbers. But the problem is the planning department deals with, especially in the old days, dealt with property before it had addresses. A subdivision before you had many different property ID numbers. So at that time, the planning department basically had a spreadsheet to maintain all of the projects. And I know, Brent, you're probably still struggling.
Still struggling.
To what type of program or application to manage all of the projects which have been approved in the past. And we've been trying, and even Zucker talked with BS&A to try to see if we could get the planning and zoning application, that's rezonings, subdivisions, site condos, special use,
Site plans.
and it just doesn't seem to work very well. And the problem is there are other applications throughout the nation where the applications start with the planning department and then finish with building engineering. But Michigan is a state in which BS&A really has a foothold, and it's the standard. And it started with assessing departments, and basically everyone has BS&A. So I know Brent's going to struggle for a long time to figure out what program to be able to use to manage the applications that come through there. And what they recommended is that we use an aggressive approach to technology as an overall economic strategy. And Brent's already starting to do that. We're moving towards digital submittals. Well, I know with signs we do that, and we also don't have paper applications. And what we're really trying to get to the point is that someone could submit completely online their development application, including the payment, and they can't do that now. But then what we want to do is develop a system where anyone could go online, including yourselves, and you could look and see where that application is in process, like pending to Planning Commission, approved at the Planning Commission. And so we're moving in that direction. And these technological improvements come slowly. And what's interesting is when you look to areas where they do it very, very well. It's around San Jose because of Silicon Valley. where computers are really part of the culture of everyone's day-to-day life. So they came forward with the recommendations, and they asked us to form a technology partnership, which we've done internally, expand equalizer system, and we are working on that and trying to do all the upgrades and work hand in hand with BSNA. BSNA makes the equalizer. Use the document attachment capabilities, which we've started doing, especially in the building department areas. Now, timelines. They've identified that the planning department are well within the national standards, where building and engineering activities had some cases where they had applications took longer than what they recommend. And they recommended using contract staff when necessary to meet timelines, and that they commit to meet these timelines 95% of the time. And when the planning department was meeting them over 99% of the time. And this final site plan review, now this is for building permit review, not planning and zoning. And they were finding it was taking 56 days when their standards recommend that 30 days for a first review and then quicker and quicker. Now, as we all know, since this study was done, we've hired SafeBuilt to run our building department. We actually took the timeline standards which Zucker has found, which are the national standards, and have built that into our contract with SafeBuilt. So they have specific timelines which they have to maintain. Now, this is an area which, on these recommendations, which we haven't found, and I talked about this a little bit more. And what Paul Zucker has found out universally is that developers are willing to pay more if the staff will get the reviews done quicker and do them well. And that you can even have like surcharges for technology. But if those developers will see actual achievement in those areas. Well, we came from a different angle. We're not going to raise our fees, and we have not raised our fees. And what Zucker found out is that we're prudent and conservative budget policies, and and what they also said is that poor performing departments hurts economic development. And I'll give you a couple different examples. Tom and John, what do you hate worse when you submit something and they kick it back to you to fix it? You send it back and then they kick it back with more? Zucker says that's unacceptable. Review it, everything. Right. And you get one shot at it. And there are some departments, and it could be planning, engineering, or building, where that goes back and forth many, many, many times. It's inefficient, and I've even seen it. I've worked in places where like they almost like invent new things, or they purposely are making it go longer, or it appears that they're making it go longer, and it's a control thing. But in the end, we've sort of are trying to create that culture that we want to do fast, fair, and predictable reviews in planning, engineering, building, and the fire department, and that's part of our economic development strategy. And we want to be well known for that. And that doesn't mean we're pushovers. It means we do our job quickly. And when no's the answer, the no should come quick. That's another thing that developers hate. No, but then you drag it out. It's like, pulling off a Band-Aid too slowly. All right, like I said, they're willing to pay. Developers are willing to pay extra fees for shorter timelines and more certainty in the process. At this time, we have not raised any of our fees. I think that's about it. Well, they asked us to consider fee increases, but we just have not gone down that route. And that's it. And I'll answer any questions if you have.
Well, I think during that period of time, I still may have that report, but I remember that was one of the key things that we did with the PUD. If you remember, PUD, they put in almost $1 million invested on an if-come basis of approval.
Right, we required basically, to almost have all of the drawings done before you even had the rezoning, all of the construction drawings, which we've totally changed it. So now so that you have a preliminary approval and get your rezoning, which is, and then you go forward and do final approval after.
So there has been a lot of improvement since that period of time in terms of expediting the drawings, expediting everything. As far as I remember, Mr. Schultz was there too, so I can remember that we did spend a lot of time in improving.
But the doorknobs were going to be really pretty.
Well,
The doorknobs were going to be pretty,
if
though.
anyone wants the Zucker report, we have it on PDF. We can get it to you, no problem. I think it's online.
It's
on your
online,
website,
on the planning
on the
department
planning department's website. But really, they broke up the 102 recommendations into departmental areas, what each department should be able to do, because everyone has a role in it, and they forget that this planning and zoning area is just one part of it. One of the most difficult things we run into now is reuse of industrial buildings. We have people purchasing or leasing, and it's usually worse because they're leasing it, an industrial building which currently has fire suppression, but then they come in and change the use group. They're more dangerous, more flammable, more crammed in there, and then they're mad because they need to provide more fire suppression. And it's a problem because what the automotive industry has changed. You have a company who negotiates with a supplier or a manufacturer, and they do a job, and that job is over a specified time period of like 3-4 years, and then the contract's over. So they just lease the building for that 3 or 4 years, and they want to put as little money into the building as possible because they don't own it. And that becomes difficult because we have these deals go really, really quick, and the fire suppression sometimes comes up as a surprise late in the process, which we're trying to learn how to smooth out.
That Zucker report, I think, is very valuable, especially for a new member of the commission, because it sets forth in a Reader's Digest version the whole scope of what the planning department does, how they do it, steps in there, and it's a great report. If nobody's ever read that, and I think we all have, if you haven't, take a look at that. Just maybe the planning department. It's really very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. But again, going back to my comment, now we're dealing with problem sites. Now we're dealing with all the problems. It's not like we're all brand new. So we have to be flexible. But every community, you hear a lot about every community as far as they are really a bitch to work with, or they're really bad to work with, etc. And that goes on. Every developer is going to want immediate response. I don't care what you say or what you do. But if you're reasonable, that's the key, as far as I'm concerned. The reasonableness, and it's a two-edged sword, because, in my opinion, sometimes you become sloppy when you become fast, rather than what do we want, what is our image that we want to create, and that's the key as far as I'm concerned. Where do we want to be? What do we want to be noted for as far as our image?
Mr. Schultz and Mr. Evans.
I've, through the years, in my only 30 or so years in town, have talked to some people that have built and done business here, and it's pleasant to see that the perception is now coming around to the fact that the first answer is not always no, because no is a safe answer. If someone says, I want to do X, Y, Z, and you say no, then you can go back and change it to yes. But if you say yes and then find a problem, you can't go back and change it to no, because you've already said yes. And I think it's critical that we do things expeditiously and not necessarily giving no as the initial response, because that turns people off in a big hurry.
Yes, Mr. Evans?
Now, where are we at on, in terms of our timeline for approvals? Has there been a lot of improvement since the Zucker report?
Well, in which arena? I mean, because you have site plans, you have zonings, which there hasn't been many, and then you have building department.
Site
How about site plans?
Right?
Site plans, we've always been fairly quick.
Yeah, 30 days.
But we have more administrative approvals now, so we have, when it's in appropriate situations, when it's zoned IB or base, whatever, as defined by the zoning ordinance, we've got the ability to do more administrative, so there's not that lag time before the planning commission. But we've always been pretty fast when it does involve the planning commission, because we've basically had the standing rule that if if you get the application in at least 30 days before the meeting, you're on the meeting. You know, and I can't think of once in 10 years where something's come up that we've had to renege on that promise.
And I think what's happened now is because you're not busy, someone comes in after
Yeah.
less than 30 days, Brent will say, well, we're not swamped, so we can do it.
It's like the restaurant when there's no one there and you walk in with your family and there's the busboy, the maitre d, and the waiter are all there, ready to go. We're very welcoming right now, but things are picking up.
And then I would say, I have to note about the building department. Safe Build is doing an incredible job. They do permits at the counter sometimes, small ones, and they're doing a really good job. They have a very aggressive, culture of continuous improvements. They do surveys. They have surveys of all their, customers, and they get a 99% satisfaction rating from their customers.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Miller. You have another question?
Yeah, where I think we could have improvement, I don't want to be negative, but I'm going to be. I've asked for this several times, and I've seen this. We need the checklist that they go by, and we know what to expect. And we constantly, I've asked for that, I don't know how many times I've asked for that, more than 6 months. But, their seals are not on the drawings. There's always something missing that there shouldn't be if it were on a checklist. And I stressed that before, and I'm going to stress it again.
It'll be emailed to you tomorrow. It was finished today.
Wow.
I've had an intern that's come in, been able to help us in projects like that.
Well,
It's
more
completed
importantly,
today.
are the applicants getting it? Are they looking at it? So that they know and we know what to expect. Because that I think is really an area that we're weak in. We need that. Good.
We agree, Mr. Strait.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's necessary, yeah. Just one quick comment, not necessarily on the planning end, but on the Zucker report. I thought it was interesting how they emphasize how conservative the city is as far as spending money, wasting money, and to have a lack of computers for our staff. That's, because it just shows how conservative the city really is, and that we really need to invest in this city so that we can use it as a development tool.
Well, they now have computers in the field, so that's totally
exactly
changed.
what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
they're
I know
in the
that
field.
they have them in the field.
Now, I know Brent's staff, you have actual laptops. Safe Built was using city laptops in which then they could communicate with actually our computers here. Safe Built is actually looking because they use handheld devices in most of their other locations. And so they're investigating going down that road.
Great. Okay, we're going to move on.
Glenn is the next presenter.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you
Thanks for coming in.
and talk with you. Thanks for the invitation. Appreciate it. First, my apologies to Commissioners Krent and Tagle, who have heard a lot of this before, so bear with me. Just for those of you who don't know me, a little bit of my background, my urban planning background education-wise. I also served most of my career at an organization called Detroit Renaissance, private nonprofit organization. Served as their director of planning and development for many, many years. And when I left there, I took on an interim position as the director of workforce development for Henry Ford Community College. And then I started here in this position as economic development specialist in this past November. So very happy to be here on the kind of on the municipal side of things and the public sector side. And I also, at one part of my career for 6 years, I served on it's kind of what you guys all did, on the planning commission. I served on the Huntington Woods Planning Commission for 6 years and chaired that commission as well for about 4 of those years. So a lot of these issues is very interesting because every community is facing a lot of these same issues, and the issue on the checklist was certainly an issue that I recall vividly in those days. In terms of what we're looking at in terms of economic development, we are seeing some major changes. The way the climate is for economic development, particularly at the state level and how we're dealing with that. The traditional focus that many people think of when they think of economic development is more of an economic hunting approach. Communities or states, for that matter, would go out to other states, to other communities, and try and find businesses, and you wave nice tax abatements and tax incentives in front of them. You try and woo them to come from one community to another and come to your community to help build up your tax base and support what you're trying to do. That approach has been going on for a number of years. It has seen a heavy reliance on those tax abatements and incentives to get those companies to move from one place to another. And arguably, a lot has resulted from that. I mean, you see a lot of communities that really depended upon that approach. But what it did was, in many cases, it pitted communities versus communities. It pits states against states, and it still does in many cases. This is still continuing as we go on today, but it's changing. There's a perception of picking winners and losers when you go out there and waive tax incentives from others, and it's an expensive process. Not only is it cost money to provide tax abatements and tax incentives to the community, it's also expensive to send staff out and travel. There's heavy travel budgets involved usually with that approach. And there's been a questionable return on investment in many cases. We've seen studies that have come out that have said, there's not necessarily a correlation between that approach, the economic hunting approach, and economic improvement and enhancement in a community or a state. So the state of Michigan is taking the lead in terms of how they're kind of changing that environment and kind of trying to level the playing field for what's going on. So the new state focus is to level that playing field and they're starting with a simpler corporate tax structure. Governor Snyder has come in. He is making some major changes at the corporate tax level. The leading one is changing the whole corporate tax. It is now a flat 6%. The whole single business tax is gone, which is very confusing. Many businesses definitely appreciate the new approach. There's a level 6% for C Corps that are out there. What this is doing is creating an 86% reduction in business taxes. So that field is starting to be leveled a little bit, which has been very helpful. Michigan has seen a change in terms of the U.S. business tax climate ranking. We're now number 12, according to the Tax Foundation. The corporate tax ranking, we're now number 7. We were 49th. Not very long ago, we were 49th and moved up to 7. So you're starting to see that change. The big one that's coming before us and has just been introduced is the proposal to eliminate the personal property tax. That is huge. It's a major endeavor. There's going to be a lot of discussion you're going to see at the state level. The big issue is going to be how do you replace that revenue for communities. Communities rely on that revenue. Some communities more than others. Troy has been actually doing fairly well in terms of that and have not depended as much on the personal property tax. But there are other communities out there that you see 80% of their tax based on personal property tax. They better find a way to try and. Midland is a good example of that.
It's Midland down.
Right. So
what else is interesting is the personal property tax is what we abate. That's all we abate. So if they get rid of personal property tax, we won't even have any abatements. Well, I should say we won't have a policy on abatements. Because we've only given those out. We could do other ones, but we haven't gone down that road.
Right. So while the tax structure is being changed for corporations, for businesses, at the same time you're seeing the changes in terms of what the programs that have already been out there, those have been eliminated, many of them. MEGA, the Michigan Economic Growth Authority, which was a huge program that provided incentives for businesses to grow in communities, to move from one state to another, to basically expand their operations. They depended upon that. The brownfield tax credit is gone. The historic tax credit is now gone at the state level. The film tax credits, which has been publicized heavily, has been significantly reduced. It is nowhere near where it once was. So you're seeing that there's limited state funding right now. So in place of all this, there's kind of what's called a closing fund that the state has developed. So they got $100 million, and they will look at projects on an individual basis and say, okay, what do you need? If it's going to cost you X to come here and expand here in Michigan versus somewhere else, what is that difference? And can we help fill that gap? And that's kind of what they're focused on in terms of incentives. It's a closing fund. And so there's a limited amount of money available for that purpose. And that's the approach that the state has been taken as opposed to what has been done in the past. So big changes up front for that. So where's the state going in terms of economic development? If the reliance is no longer on this economic hunting approach, what's the focus going forward? The focus is now on economic gardening, kind of a loose term, kind of a cute term in terms of what it is, but economic gardening is basically a concept that is to work with your existing businesses. It's to cultivate existing businesses to help them grow and provide them with the infrastructure, the information, and the connectivity to make sure that they can grow and to help them fulfill their needs. So a state pilot program has been launched. I think 54 companies throughout the state have been selected as part of this initial first phase pilot program. And the program has been developed based upon, back in 1989, Littleton, Colorado, sort of developed that economic gardening concept, where a major company, probably the largest employer actually, basically closed up in the late 80s, the early 90s, and there's a debate in the community. Do we go out and find ourselves another company that's going to employ 1,200 people? Or should we take a look at our existing businesses and target them and see what we can do with that? So they took the approach of working with the existing businesses. And the target is to really look at those second stage businesses. Those are the companies that are in that growth mode. Those are the ones that are seeing the most growth levels. So that's what Littleton did, and a model was developed out of that, and other states have started picking up on that model, particularly Florida, and now Michigan has been a leader in economic gardening. So again, you identify the business needs, you provide the information, the infrastructure, and connectivity to address those needs. And what this does is that it addresses limited local resources. Cities don't have the money anymore to go on, have major travel budgets and to offer the tax abatements that they did in the past. And it also helps reduce the need for those tax incentives. So you work with what you got, and you help them grow from there. The targets for economic gardening, as I mentioned, the second stage companies, that is generally defined, and you see different definitions of it, generally defined as between 6 and 99 employees, $750,000 to $50 million in annual revenue. And the most job growth does come from these second stage companies. That's why they are targeted. In fact, 66% of the net private sector jobs created in the last 25 years were by small businesses. So there's a reason for why this level of businesses are being targeted. Troy is working as a part of this initiative. We were kind of modeling it after the state program, but we're going to expand upon it. And we feel that it's a good fit for here in Troy, given many of the reasons that I just talked about in terms of the benefits of it. So Troy Michigan Business Connect is our economic gardening initiative. That's kind of how we're tagging it, based upon what the state has done, which is Pure Michigan Business Connect. So we're trying to kind of co-brand it along the way. Our focus is on partnerships and collaboration. We partner with Pure Michigan Business Connect. We've formed an advisory committee made up of key stakeholders here in the city and at the state and county level. So MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, is a partner around that table, Oakland County Economic Development, Automation Alley, which is a huge stakeholder here in the city, the Troy Chamber of Commerce, and the Walsh Institute. Walsh Institute is the business focused part of Walsh College. The economic gardening in general focuses on second stage company. The Troy program is going to look at obviously the entire business community. We are not going to just focus strictly on second stage. We are going to work with anybody and everybody that wants to grow here in the city, so we don't play favorites. But again, our target is kind of the second stage companies, because that's where the growth is going to be.
We're not going, and that means we're not sending Glenn to Hawaii to attract.
That's correct.
That's or Germany, or China, or Korea.
Right.
Maybe Ohio.
So we talk to the businesses. We talk to them, what do they need? We hear a variety of things, what companies need in order to grow. It can range from market analysis, product distribution and logistics, GIS, utility issues they might have. They might need to develop a website. It's financial management, intellectual property, capital access, talent attraction and retention is probably the #1 thing I hear from every company that I talk to. It's talent attraction, basically. Human resources. Growing companies don't necessarily have the staff. They have an HR professional. They don't have a plan, HR plan. Can we help provide that? Can we help connect them to resources that will help them do that? Site location assistance, which we do automatically. Supported employment, municipal processes, et cetera. The list goes on and on. We don't necessarily provide all of these services. We do provide GIS, which, by the way, the GIS service here on staff is phenomenal. Just the excellent staff that we have here, and And what they can do is just unbelievable. So that's a great resource that we can offer to the community. And the state has kind of taken a look at that as well, saying that, oh, maybe that's something we can tap into as well. So GIS we can do in-house, but the others we're going to connect. We're going to talk to others that provide that service, and we can basically make that connection and help them grow from that standpoint to provide the service. An example, a local company came up to me. They're a young, growing company, and their target is they're kind of web developers, and they want to help expand their market, and they're focused on manufacturers, and particularly in the food industry in particular. So we talked about how we can help them. So one way would be to identify the manufacturers that are here in Troy within a certain stage, maybe those that are developed, that are focused on food, manufacturing, development, distribution, that kind of thing, and to identify those companies and to help this company expand the market. So it's using GIS for a purpose that this company may not have the expertise in-house to do, but we can help them provide that for them. So it's a tremendous asset for them to grow. Another example is human resources. Again, the companies may not have HR professionals on staff, so we can partner with a JVS, with Oakland County, with others that provide these services for little or no charge to the company.
Just a question. What are some of the main sources for helping people with business startups? Say you're a small business and you just want to some help with the startup aspect of it. Where can they go, other than Chamber of Commerce for one, for sure?
Yeah, I think, for startup companies, probably the best one is the Small Business Technical Development Center, which is based in Oakland County. It's actually a statewide organization, but they do have an office up in the Oakland County offices. And so I work closely with them, and they have excellent programs to work with those startup companies to address the needs that they might have.
Where do these small companies typically go for research and development information, since they don't have the money or the ability to have those people on staff? Where do they find that information?
Yeah, that varies. Oakland County has a one-stop shop, which is generally their first stop when they need assistance. They can walk in there, they can get immediate assistance with financial. The Small Business Technical Development Center also can provide that assistance as well. And small businesses will come to me, and then I will connect them to those organizations.
Do you think they have the resources available right now to meet all the needs of these businesses? And what would your assessment be of those services at this moment?
I think generally between the state and the county, there are some excellent services that are offered out there that certainly gives these startup companies a leg up in terms of getting going. The trick is to find out exactly what the companies might need, what kind of services they're going to need, and zeroing in on exactly what is wanted, and then trying to find the resource to help them. But generally the county and the state provides a good part of that.
Thank you.
So that's kind of the focus in terms of where we're at in terms of economic gardening, and the focus working with the existing businesses and linking them up to the services that they might need. And in terms of economic development, we can develop programs all the time. They can be excellent programs, but unless we have the infrastructure, the processes, the structure in place here at the city, the best economic development programs aren't going to work. And Mark talked about a lot of the structural changes that have occurred. And unless we're fast, fair, and predictable on our services, it doesn't matter. We can attract as many companies as we want or work with as many companies as we want, but unless they can come here and feel like they're working in an environment where they can really expand and truly have the ear of the city and the community, they're not going to grow. They're not going to come here. So the city of Troy has really taken some excellent steps. And the building department being structured is a primary thing that I've heard from many of those companies that I talked to. Just the swiftness of the approval processes, the understanding, knowing up front what some of the issues are so they can deal with it. It is so important to businesses that are trying to grow and businesses that are trying to locate in a particular place. Your leadership as a planning commission has been tremendous. It has resulted in an updated master plan, which I talk about every day with the companies that I'm with, because they don't realize what they can do now. The zoning ordinance, which backs that up, they don't understand. They're still thinking way back when, a very compartmentalized zoning ordinance, which is tradition in which most people think of. You can only have industry here, you can only have the housing here. But now, with a broad-based approach and the flexibility that our zoning ordinance offers, companies are thinking, oh, I can put retail potentially in this industrial area? That's something we've never heard of before. So that's something we're continuing to work on. We're continuing to promote that. It's very important. The Big Beaver zoning corridor study is also very important. Again, quality of life is essential to economic development. And what's important now is that people want to be more of an urban walkable environment. You want to be able to have pedestrian access. You want to have the buildings up at the street. Those all add into what a quality urban environment is all about and what companies and residents want. So I think everybody's on the right track in terms of that. And all this adds to the, creating that environment for investment that we're trying to achieve. In addition to what I've talked about, we have enacted monthly business roundtable meetings with the city manager. We invite maybe a half dozen companies from Troy. We mix them up every month. Sometimes we theme them, whether it's in the financial sector or other sectors, or we'll mix them up if we want to. It's a small group discussion around this table to basically find out what are the issues that you're facing today. What can we do as a city to help you? Here's some of the things that we've done at the city level to help improve the business climate, but what else do you need and how can we help? So that dialogue has been very important. And probably one of the most important aspects of those meetings is that those companies are talking to each other. And they don't even know that they're right down the street from each other and they're in the same kind of industry. So we're seeing business cards exchange back and forth, and they're now they're developing business. And that's the whole idea, and that's the goal.
And the key thing is we're part of it. Not that we don't, what we find is we don't actually do anything except for provide connection. And that's really what Glenn's job primarily is providing those connections. Someone needs something, and he might know somebody who might know somebody who can then come around and help.
And we have a roundtable meeting tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact.
It's kind of funny. We started out, John Zerlak said, okay, we're only going to meet with, we have to have at least how many businesses? How many employees?
Oh, like 100 or something?
Yeah, he said, I'm only going to meet with them if they have at least 100 employees. Now we've done so many meetings, the businesses are getting smaller and smaller. But that's not necessarily bad because we're starting to get in these high-tech companies. You wouldn't believe how many web developer and programming companies there are in Troy. It's unbelievable. Small little places there that just have a great amount of potential.
In nondescript facilities, and you walk into these places, you cannot believe the level of equipment, the staffing that they have, and just what they're accomplishing.
It's
on an international
how
level.
hard it is for them to get people to move here. It's incredible to find that out. They won't move here.
Because?
Because it's Southeast Michigan. And we have baggage. I'll leave it at that. I can talk more.
I can talk more.
Well, the engineering people say engineers who have left, who were shed by the automotive industry, many of them are not going to come back. There's another problem. There's a great salary lag in engineering. If you transferred your skills to let's say the aerospace industry, automotive engineers make considerable less, so there's no reason to come back.
Although our cost of living is less here, so hopefully that evens out a little bit.
But I guess all I was trying to point out is that, and Glenn mentioned it, we hear every single day how hard it is to attract qualified employees and training resources for a certain type of industries.
How does the quality of life impact on that?
How does the quality of life
Yeah,
impact on that?
right. No, the amenities that we have. Does that make it a difference?
Well, we lose sometimes to these, I'm sorry for interrupting, but these high-tech web development companies and programming companies, they clearly tell us that their employees don't want to be in Troy. They want to be in Ferndale, Detroit, Ann Arbor, Royal Oak. And in some cases, being close to those areas is not good enough. But what's funny, though, when we talk to these guys, they're starting to get older and they're having children, and then they're moving to Troy. It's kind of funny to see that. But the point is, though, is to attract the younger employees. They want to be near those cities. And, they appreciate when they hear how we're trying to transform Troy, but no, it's not moving really quick. We know that.
I can tell you the businesses that I talk to that are here in Troy, they love it here. They really do, because of the assets that we have, and I'll get into that a little bit. Other items that I have and we've put together in terms of economic development tools, a new business checklist. You mentioned a checklist before, and we have also a new business checklist. So when a business comes to the door, where do we go? Who do we talk to? So we have so very simple, one page. It's on the website. Every email I send out to companies, basically, that's one of the first things I'll put in there. If I want to pull a permit, who do I call? If I need a fire inspection, who do I call? Signage, who do I call? Very simple, straightforward, one page. It's easy. They get it. That's what we're trying to do, make it simple for them. Significant online resources. The GIS mapping that's already online that you're all aware of is phenomenal. Having the master plan, the zoning ordinance, which is very user-friendly, I think, in terms of a zoning ordinance. You can just go to the section you want and pull it out, and it works out terrifically. We have some proposed online tools because the whole website's in transition right now, putting together a business interest form. So in businesses, they have multiple ways of contacting us. One will be through the internet. Another business resources tool. We're going to partner with an entity that's statewide that kind of connects businesses to other resources. Again, expanding that universe of help and resources for the companies. And we have planning and economic development communications blasts that we're going to try and pull out too. And put together a list of businesses throughout Troy and make sure that we communicate with them as often as needed. We're continuing to make those website updates, and we've talked about talent and trying to attract talent. The Oakland Job Hub is a major job fair that was held back in February. It's an annual event, and it was at Oakland University. Troy is a co-sponsor of that event. 25% of the companies that participate in that event were from Troy. So it's only Oakland County companies that were part of it. So it's a very important event. Again, it's to help try and get those companies out there and connect them to the folks that are looking for work. And that was not necessarily focused on college-age kids. It was more for those that are going back into the workforce and trying to adapt to changes. I work very closely with our community affairs staff, Cindy Stewart, and we're tied. Economic development and community affairs is tied very closely together. We hired marketing associates to review our marketing materials and make recommendations on the city website, and that's in progress right now. Troy Economic Development is prominently featured in local publications and statewide publications such as Exology, Prosper, Troy Today is our quarterly magazine, A-Source, which is the relocation guide, and others as well. And we provide media and publicity support for new businesses, and businesses, if they have something new to say, we're happy to promote it. So anything we can do to promote the businesses, help them grow, we're willing to do that. We'll help arrange ribbon cuttings and grand openings, whatever it takes. We want to make sure that people are aware of the businesses here in the city, and we're happy to do that. So whatever it takes, and we do believe that Troy is Michigan's premier address for business, retail, and commerce. And I think that's really true. You talked about all the banks before in terms of along Big Beaver Road, probably the banking center of Michigan. Big Beaver Road is Bank Central. But we're also the kind of the target for many of the businesses and the assets that are here in the States, right here in Troy in terms of business assets. We have a lot to build upon. We're the largest city in Oakland County. We're a very diverse location, which is very important. Second highest tax valuation in Michigan, with a corporate and division headquarters location for Flagstar, Meritor, many other companies as well. 56.8% of our residents have a bachelor's degree or higher. That's huge. We're a top location in Michigan for automotive research and design, even more than so than Ann Arbor, in terms of the number of companies that are located here in Troy that relate to automotive research. On top of all that, we're one of the lowest tax rates in Oakland County. That's huge for companies. That's what they want to see, especially when we talk about leveling that playing field. We're the safest city in Michigan, over 75,000. We're 19th in the United States. It's not bad. And we're a nationally ranked school district. So you start adding that up along with many of the other assets, we really are creating an environment for investment. I think we have a lot to offer here. We have an efficient business development infrastructure, which you guys have helped create, which I think has been phenomenal. We promote strong partnerships. We collaborate effectively with utility companies and others to help provide timely delivery of services, because we can't do it all on our own. We are so dependent upon others to do their part as well when a new business comes in. So we'll partner wherever is necessary. And also, and it was mentioned before, in terms of quality of life, we're part of a region. We can't do it by ourselves. We need to make sure that we're a strong local partner with the city of Detroit, with Oakland County, with the state of Michigan, with every other community in southeast Michigan, and we work closely with them to promote regional economic development. So it's so important for helping us over here, and I strongly believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. If this whole region starts improving and keeps getting better, Troy will get better as well and improve and be a great place for businesses and for folks living here as well. So happy to work with you going forward in the future. I'm very pleased to meet you all. And any questions, and I hope to continue that dialogue going on well into the future.
Well, I have a question to start with, and that would be, I know you talked about some marketing initiatives. Obviously, marketing is huge in this particular arena, and I'd love to see some sort of ad campaign to promote Troy. Now, again, that's something that doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot of money. That's something that can be done. As a matter of fact, I'd even volunteer to help you with something like that. I've made films, commercials. I mean, we start with things just with local television, but local cable access, for that matter. It's for start anything. I think, and that's part of what I think our role needs to be. In that, everybody is involved in marketing. I see planning commissioners as ambassadors for the city. So in that sense, we market the city of Troy as planning commissioners. I would like to see us get more involved in the marketing of the city of Troy, possibly by, there's other ideas I want to talk about as we go forward, but I'd like to see us develop a speakers bureau. I'd like to see us get young people more involved in the city. You talk about market. Mr. Miller, you were saying about, well, people seem like business people get a little bit older, then they move here to Troy. Well, why is that? That's because of the schools. And the reason people come here, number one, is the schools. But the best thing we have going for us, I think, first and foremost, is our location. It's where we are. And because of our location, our easy accessibility to millions of people, we are a fantastic place for companies to come and grow here, of any size, because your market is just huge in this particular town. We're accessible by any mode of transportation, and building off our schools and the promotion of our other assets. This also brings to the fore that as we go forward, we need to really look seriously at the amenities that we have, and it shows the importance of amenities because those do draw people. And we're not drawing a cross-section of people at this point. We'd love to get younger professionals in here, and that's a goal for the future. But again, all this starts with marketing in some fashion. And again, I like to start seeing 30-second clips on TV. Troy wrote for business, and start showing why, especially emphasizing our location, the companies that are here. Just little snippets. Talk to some of the leaders in town, have them do 30-second spots. And anyway, that's just one little thing. But there's simply any number of things that we can do. But I think marketing is real key. So.
I think that you've got a great message. In fact, I'm sitting here with my tongue hanging out and some of the things you're telling us that we're doing. I had no idea. And I really think it's a great message, and we got to get it out and market it like Mark says.
Yeah, it's a very good message. Mr. Schultz?
I liked your comment about not focusing strictly on second stage companies, because we have an awful lot of corporate headquarters still in the city. We have a lot of North American headquarters still in the city, and we have a lot of state headquarters still in the city. And I certainly hope that the second stage businesses grow. But if one of those companies I just mentioned leaves, it's going to take a long time to fill the hole. A long time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agreed.
We've got some mighty big employers in this city still.
Right. That's where we differ a little bit from the state's program. The state is strictly focused on second stage companies in terms of this program. We are not.
And I have a question for Mark, I think. You said that the tax abatements are personal property tax. Was not Delphi granted a property tax abatement for 10 years?
Well, they took that tax abatement away before I started working for the city. I think that was about right before. I started working for the city in 2000.
I think Delphi, to bring their headquarters here, was granted a true property tax.
Well, that law allows you to do it. However, City Council's most current policy on PA 198 is for personal property. And that's a bias towards old-fashioned manufacturing, because we've had companies come in who have like 100 fairly high-paying jobs, all at $100,000, and their personal property investment is a bunch of computers at $60,000. just say $200,000, $250,000. Compare, that law was really big for when you had a big manufacturing facility and large and very expensive equipment.
Because I seem to remember when Delphi came into town, it was a 50% tax abatement for 10 years. And I'm going, the 50% they actually paid was still way more than it cost the city to have that building in. I mean, so far as police
But they
and fire.
eventually pulled their abatement and they had to repay because they left.
Yeah, you have to play by the rules.
But the other big void was the Volkswagen when they pulled out. That was a big void. That was hard to replace that you're talking about. Took a long time to replace.
You know what
that
the
building.
lesson of that is? Not that long ago, Volkswagen was playing us against, where are they at now, in Auburn Hills?
Auburn
Hills. They were coming back to move in another location, and they were playing off of us. And that's the problem with the old-fashioned hunting and gathering is that they tend to jump where they can get the best deal, so then we fight against each other. Yeah,
Well, that's not the point. The point is we have to really try to motivate
We have
the
to
ones
keep
that
the
we've
ones
got.
that are here.
Definitely.
And keep the ones that we've got is going to be the key. I agree with you.
I'm thrilled to say that, we've got, one corporate headquarters, and several corporate headquarters that are expanding right now in Troy. So it's just, it's great. Flagstar.
Flagstar's booming, yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. It's great. Took over some office space on Big Beaver.
But the fact of the matter is, our vacancy rates have been pretty stable at 30%, both for industrial and office. It really hasn't changed that much.
30% is not a good rate.
It's been that way for
Yeah.
maybe 7-8 years, and it really hasn't changed much.
Yet we're still predicting a drop in evaluations for.
Yeah, we're not to the bottom on that until maybe
Commercial.
14, 15, 16, maybe, we're not exactly sure. It'll be pretty flat. But that's the key, though, is we have to get enough business activity going to fill up the buildings so then their values can go. Because what happens now is people can just go to another site for cheaper.
Keep in mind that our challenge is that on many of these office buildings, especially the ones that are vacant, were built in a different era. They're built in the 70s and 80s for a different purpose, generally a single purpose in many cases. And now you see those single purposes no longer viable. The companies have left. And now you've got these buildings that are virtually empty, particularly up in the Crooks
Well,
area.
no, Kmart doesn't matter because that's functionally obsolete.
Right.
It's they pay no value. The building has zero value. What he's talking about is Northfield.
Yeah, but
Where
I understand that.
there's-
My thought was, buildings were built around one specific function, and that was a
Right.
Kmart. There was,
Yeah.
And so even if you try and
can't
find
adapt it.
multiple tenancy, companies don't necessarily work that way the way they used to. It's not the same office environment. So you've got these buildings that are there you're trying to fill. That's very difficult. So which is why I'm very glad that there's a flexible zoning ordinance. We can look at if some of these buildings don't make sense, maybe the developer can take one down. Maybe we can look at retail on a site. Maybe look at a hotel on a site, where in the past it was strictly office. That's all you could do. The market doesn't bear that anymore.
Well, you talked about quality of life, which is something I think I totally agree with, and all of us do. But one of the key things in quality of life, there's several things that I think reflect on that. And one of the areas that I think that we're kind of negligent on is the cooperation between the various departments within our organization. I'll give you an example. We spent a tremendous amount of money renovating Rochester Road. And what did we do? We put the highway lights in, the same as what we've got on Big Beaver. The tall highway lights, you know what I'm talking about? Instead of having the coach lights, which could have had the opportunity, somehow we have to really get through to engineering, have to really understand what we're really after. Because I really don't think they're really understanding that aspect. That was a very bad move on our part, I think, on that. The thing that I wanted to also talk about is the signage. I think that's a very important factor. What do we want to look like, going up and down, looking at, let's say, Van Dyke, which is nothing more than a bunch of billboards, versus Bloomfield Township, Bloomfield Hills. I mean, that's important to me. Those are two important things. And I think that you really have to have some sort of a vision. Where do we want to be to attract the people that you're talking about that they have over in Royal Oak or over in Ferndale? What do we need to attract those people? A company is as good as its staff. And you want to have good people working for you. Where do you get them and how do you get them? The quality of life. They want to be where they want to really enjoy the quality of life. So that's the key thing that you had mentioned, but is there any kind of a 10-year program, 5-year program, 20-year program, that what we want to actually, the image that we want to create and how are we going to create it? I guess that's not really your area so much as it is planning, I guess.
Although I think the master plan, the updated master plan has done a good job of trying to address. some
Good
of
job,
those
but
issues.
there's more to it that we want to
It's
create.
now implementing.
Yeah,
those
it's
aspects.
implementing, but it's also, I think it's a psychological thing far more than just the environment. I'll give you an example. What do they want? They probably want, as much as I don't like to say it, but bars. Or that
They
kind
call it
of,
1,000 nights out.
there you
Just
go.
before someone gets married and have kids, I forget the exact number is, the community has to provide 1,000 evenings or 1,000 activities
Exactly.
before they get married and settle down.
Exactly. And that's what they're looking for. I dealt with a lot of young people, that's what I had, although my staff was always young. And you know, that was a big thing. But the quality, yeah, my firm was in Troy. So I had a 10-mile radius or 20-mile radius that I could choose from the east side all the way to the west side. I loved it. I mean, I think this is great here. But anyhow, I didn't mean to get off.
That's okay. Anything else? Brett, do you want to present?
Yeah, I don't have that many slides. I was just going to try to tie in the economic development with planning and zoning and some of the things the Planning Commission does, and I'll try to be really quick. The Planning Department, as you know, we had reorganization in 2010. We were reduced from a full-time staff of 5 down to a full-time staff of 2. However, we have a planning consultant who has part-time hours to assist us on projects as needed. We retained all our previous planning and zoning responsibilities. We've also picked up zoning administrator responsibilities. We're the liaison for the Zoning Board of Appeals. I picked up 4 additional employees that under myself, under code enforcement, they get involved in planning and zoning. You know, we try to have crossover for efficiencies. The certified building official is under my responsibility. And we've also had responsibilities transferred from the Historic Village and Museum, and I'm the liaison for the Historic District Commission. I bet you didn't know that. I want to talk about kind of where we were. I'll call it the old way. We had a master plan that was adopted in 1965. Excuse me. It was put in place to control growth. And some staggering numbers when you look at them. In 1960, the population of Troy was less than 20,000. By 1990, it was over 70,000 people. So in 30 years, it grew by 50,000 people. When you really try to wrap your hands around that, for a city of 34 square miles, that's a staggering amount of growth. And that was put in place to control that growth. The zoning ordinance was a tool to control it. It was what we call, there's 3 professional planners here at the table. It was outdated in that it was Euclidean. It was put in place to separate the uses, as Glenn indicated. Single purpose buildings. I give an example. If I want to go out for lunch, I've got to get in my car and I've got to drive, a couple miles away to get a sandwich, to come back, and there's tens of thousands of people that do that because we don't have a mixed use, a mixed type of community. Another staggering statistic: between 1968 and 1988, a 20-year period, the zoning map was amended over 600 times, and the text was amended over 150 times. Our zoning ordinance was amended approximately 750 times in a 20-year period. It goes to show you how inflexible that document was. And even though Troy kind of grew and thrived in spite of the zoning ordinance, it was a tool that helped get us there. But there were some challenges that developers had to face. And I would say that it certainly did not encourage reinvestment. It stifled reinvestment, but it still happened because of, as Chairman Maxwell indicated, our location, fantastic location, as well as a number of other assets. The culture in place at the time was to process applications versus initiating change. I am in no way knocking the planning department who was in place at the time. As we've all realized through our experience of comprehensively rewriting the master plan, It is a significant endeavor, and it takes buy-in from a number of stakeholders, including city staff, planning commission, city council, residents, business leaders. All these stakeholders have to kind of come together and want to change. And I think that's what happened when we took the step to comprehensively rewrite the master plan. Some of the recent initiatives that the Planning Commission certainly has been involved in: the Troy Futures Vision 2020, which was undertaken in 2006, Big Beaver Corridor Study, the Zucker report that Mark talked about, the comprehensive rewrite of the master plan, which was effective in 2008, Big Beaver Design Guidelines 2011, and the zoning ordinance in 2011. The zoning ordinance is really the big ticket item that really is helped to spearhead change, and it's helped to create an environment for investment in the city of Troy. As you know, it's web-based, it's easy to read, and this is kind of my running joke. It actually has a table of contents. I mean, miracles do happen. It permits a wider range of uses in many areas of the city. This is huge. It's increased value, it's increased opportunity, it's increased flexibility, and it's really serves as an incentive in many districts. It's allowed the market to kind of dictate what the uses are. It streamlined the approval process for many uses, as Mr. Stratt indicated, for PUDs, dramatically reduced the amount of time it takes to get a PUD approved. Site condominiums, it's eliminated some meetings from the site condominium process. It's making residential development, which is one of our challenges, easier to get approved. One of the underlying concepts of the zoning ordinance is that the most desired uses are easiest to get approved. That's huge. If you want something to happen, make it easier for that to happen. And that's one of the things we did was as I indicated earlier, expand the range of applications that are approved administratively. We've got modern parking requirements. Parking in suburban areas can really hamstring development. We encourage the reuse of existing buildings, and we've got a lot of vacant existing buildings. Again, let the market help to determine how these things are reused. We've added value to non-residential properties. We've got, as you all know, the form-based codes for Big Beaver, for Maple, and neighborhood nodes. And this is huge. Even though we've got all this change going on, one of the reasons people move to Troy is for the residential and the schools. We've protected the single-family residential neighborhoods. That's a huge component of the master plan. We've changed the culture of the planning department. There's been a paradigm shift in the planning department. Number one, we want to create an environment for investment. You're going to hear that a lot, moving forward. We've, with the help of Zucker and other changes, we've created a development culture that is fast, fair, and predictable. We've tried to eliminate arbitrary, capricious. These are ugly words. The word no is an ugly word. We've embraced technology. One of the things we've got paperless agendas. We've got electronic forms. If you come to our counter and say, "Hey, can I have a form for a preliminary site plan approval?" I'll give you my business card and say it's online. We don't generate paper. We are electronic. We are embracing technology. We're encouraging the use of technology. We create partnerships with developers, with engineers and architects. When there's a positive relationship, we nurture it. And we try to get the word out at all times that Troy is open for business. I told you I'd be brief, Mr. Chairman, and that was my
Sounds
brief
like a good
presentation.
tagline, bro.
But I want to really stress, Mark indicated earlier on, there's some of the departments and some of the staff are really kind of at the first step in relationships with developers, relationships with applicants. People come to the counter. We're in the trenches. The planning department, people come to the counter. How do I, what do I do to rezone? What do I do? Asking questions. Sometimes they say, how do I start out the business? I'll walk them. I walked someone down to Glenn's office yesterday. Walk them down the hall to Glenn. Introduce them to Glenn. We're in the trenches, but so is the planning commission. I mean, we're really in at the ground floor with these applications. The first step for many of these reuses and developments is site plan approval, and we're all involved, and we're all. I think the culture and the relationship between the planning commission and staff. I would argue, Mr. Stratt, Mr. Schultz are two of the longest-serving members. I would say the relation. And I didn't say old, Mr. Schultz.
I disagree.
I think you would agree that the relationship, I think, between staff and the planning commission is stronger than ever. I communicate with the chairman on a fairly regular basis. It's teamwork, it's staff working together, working with the boards and committees, working with city council, trying to, you know, this is open for business. We are open for business, and you know, how do we step forward and create this environment for investment? And that was the intent of the presentations tonight, was kind of serve as a starting point for generating some dialogue and moving forward.
Any further comment? Nothing? Well, I think going forward, when we can schedule it, I'd like to have another session where we just present ideas, give everybody a chance to digest what they heard this evening. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really excellent presentation.
Appreciate it. Great job.
And certainly Troy has a lot to offer. And I think we can help in moving Troy forward and helping bring more business here, keep the businesses we have. And I'd like to just have the opportunity to discuss this further, generate ideas, and see what all of us can come up with. I mean, I'm talking about ideas big and small, you know, from us speaking in public schools to whatever it may be. Marketing in some capacity. There's lots of other things. I think, Glenn, you touched on a number of really important things, and they need to be expanded upon. I think we need more of that. We need more, I think, help in the business incubation area. Another thing we can do as a planning commission is this place is this room. It's an incubator of ideas, and we've had some buildings and areas that have been vacant for a long time. What are some of the potential ideas, businesses, or enterprises that could enter or be in those spaces that have been vacant a long time? Can we be creative and put out the idea? Because everything starts with an idea. If you have a vacant area, it has to be unused. And we have a lot in the light industrial, for example. Can we come up with ideas and just present them and say, you know, what about this? What do you think about this idea? What about an artist enclave in this town? We don't have one. We put one somewhere? Well, why not? It's just one idea that could generate a lot of people coming here. But as an incubator of ideas, I think we can be helpful to the city. So if there's nothing further, we'll move on. Anything else? All right, we'll move on to the next item then, which is public comment for items on the current agenda. Do you have any public comment this evening? It's a chair. All right. Thank you. We'll close that item then, and we'll end with planning commission comments. Mr. Matsey, anything this evening?
No comments.
Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, I'm really pleasantly surprised. The study session, it was very productive. I think that, as I said, Glenn, you've got a great message, and with the 2 marks on either side of you, I really think that a lot more people ought to get the benefit of hearing what the city is doing and working together. The synergy, I think, is great. We got to get the message out, because I was really fired up listening to this.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Mr. Stratt?
Well, I echo. I think the same thing. I think very excellent. I'm very, very pleased. I think you're doing an excellent job. I think all 3 of you are.
Mr. Krent?
Same sentiment. I'm just excited about what I heard tonight. I just want to piggyback on that. This last week I watched a PBS show called Designing Healthy Communities. It's hosted by a doctor, actually, who was part of the Center for Disease Control, but more importantly, it really focused on how you design a city to be healthy. And I was so impressed with it. I'm going to give a copy to Brent and to you to view it. And then I would like to, I think you'll see it's so powerful. I would like all people in decision-making positions, like city council, for example, to see it. And what they focused on, which really built that healthy community, was number 1, trails, number 2, mass transit, and number 3, gardening, economic gardening. And I think Littleton, Colorado was featured in that. So I think it's probably 50 minutes long. It does such a super job of visually showing you what happens very quickly. I think it's an excellent tool that the leadership and the management in the city should take a look at. But I'll work with Brent on that.
Mr. Taker?
I want to thank you all. Glenn, welcome. Look forward to some big things.
Mr. Schultz?
Welcome to Troy.
Thank you.
You got some pretty smart guys on both sides of you.
I do. Yes.
And you need to do some spectacular things. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Yes, thank you very much, Glenn. We all really look forward to working with you and anybody else that can further this mission. I do have one question for Mr. Motz. Anything new on the Grand Aqua lawsuit yet?
Nope, it's just sitting in the Court of Appeals.
And how will that affect our projected, was it October beginning groundbreaking?
This fall, groundbreaking.
Should have no effect unless we ultimately lose the case, but we think we have a good case. So.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, at this point, the court has not entered any orders related to us whatsoever.
Just waiting for a hearing date.
They don't have any time limits on that? There's no time limits?
The Court of Appeals has no time limits.
Mr. Shecky?
I was really impressed with what I heard tonight, especially it's nice to have such great cheerleaders for the city of Troy. Troy's got a lot going for it. It's got a wonderful location, and to hear about the flexibility for businesses and reuse of resident commercial buildings, and they're not hampered by zoning, I think that's really wonderful. I like the flexibility of the master plan and all of the quality of life elements that we have in Troy, and I think that Troy's a great place, and I think it's time that we get more positive information out on Troy and stop some of the negativity that's going around in the media.
I agree with that. Mr. Mote, anything further? No? Anything else, Mr. Rickman? Mr. Saban?
Thank you both for attending this evening.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's a great idea, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of information that we had to kind of present this evening.
Sure.
And I think it's a great starting point. And next time we have a study session in the very near future, we'll be able to start a little earlier on our conversation. I think that they both gave us a lot of food for thought.
I agree. Something
I
else?
was just wondering if this was all really great, but it was really fast. Is there any chance we could have copies of the PowerPoints of your presentations tonight?
Yes.
That would be nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr.
If
Schultz?
I could just make one other comment. There's been some discussion around town the last month or so about the elimination of a tree preservation ordinance when the zoning ordinance was rewritten. And I would just like to make it clear to everyone watching that Troy has never had a tree preservation ordinance. Nothing was eliminated so far as tree preservation when the new zoning ordinance was written. We demanded that in the past that developers inventory all the trees before they cut them down, but there was nothing saying that anything had to be saved. So I think it's important that the public understand that.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. It was a real good starting point for us, and we hope to take your information, build on it, and continue dialogue going forward, because obviously we have to work together as we develop goals and objectives and move forward. So thank you again.
Great.
And with that, this meeting is adjourned.